Good afternoon, and welcome back to the 40% Better podcast, where we talk about all things leadership and specifically in the technology world. And hopefully when you're seeing this, the snowstorm in Texas has already passed. It's all been super easy. And Josh, who has graciously accepted our invitation to be here, will not have had a horrible time, will not have had any pipes freeze, and will have had electricity the whole time. Welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Bill. Appreciate it.
You know, I just realized you've got those stringed instruments hanging out behind you.
I do.
A snowstorm is the perfect time to do a family sing-along.
Absolutely. We'll definitely be busting out the instruments, assuming that it stays warm enough to do so.
Well, yeah, that's
We don't lose, as long as we don't lose power.
what happens if you lose power? Total segue here. Sorry, folks.
Oh yeah, no, just we'll be doing whatever we can to stay warm, and that'll probably be all of our focus.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Cool. So I noticed, and this is a total different direction than I normally go on these.
Sure.
I noticed that you guys are hiring the company that you've got.
A lot.
You're hiring a lot. Okay, so for anybody who's listening, Skylight,
Right,
is hiring a lot. I'd love to hear that. That's awesome. And clearly you're hiring human beings, not robots or AI agents. Those you're actually like
Correct.
real people.
Correct. We are definitely looking for real people. Real
I
smart.
love it. Okay. So folks go, what's
My
the
Skylight,
URL?
yes, myskylight.com/careers.
Okay, cool.
On the tech team, we're always hiring for Ruby on Rails engineers, TypeScript, specifically React and React Native engineers, and Android Kotlin engineers. I've got an open role right now for a deep level AOSP engineer. We've always got some kind of specialty stuff too, and we're hiring across the org, not just engineering, but that's where we're doing the bulk of it.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. I want to start with like a really good upbeat kind of a note.
Yes.
So, like, you guys are hiring is beautiful. So now to the real questions that we normally ask.
Go for it.
The first one is, how did you get started in leadership? Like,
Oh gosh. So I graduated college in 2004, and was already working at a place where I was basically running the website and that sort of thing. Did kind of nonprofit space for a while, then got into agencies. Agencies are great because it's a good place to learn how to cut through the cruft, get to the core of what absolutely has to be out the door and hit a deadline that is usually unreasonable, and your client doesn't care about your excuses. And so that's actually where I got into real leadership. The last agency that I was at, I was a lead developer, which meant that I was managing employees, doing one-on-ones, doing all of the architecture and meeting with clients and writing out our plans and working with designers to make sure that worked, and then doing most of the heavy lifting code and the code reviews on a team of mostly junior to mid-level engineers. And it was a blast. It was a lot of hours. Sometimes it turned into jumping in on project management. It was a lot of whatever needs to be done, we do that. If we'd sell something and we'd go, oh, this time we're doing an Apple TV app. And none of us had ever built an Apple TV app. It was brand new at the time. So we got in and we figured out how to do it. Or this thing needs custom animations or audio or whatever. And we would just figure out how to do it. So that was really cool. And then I, right after that, went to my first startup, which was a company called Creative Market. And I went back to I was just going to be an engineer, but within 6 months, they were like, hey, we need a manager. You've done this before. Would you be willing to be a manager? So I stepped into that role, and I've been doing management and leadership stuff ever since.
very cool. That's awesome. When you started to transition from individual contributor into some level of leadership, what did you notice that was different, that like you needed new skills, or like, how did that play out?
Well, I'll talk about it specifically at the startup at Creative Market, because when I was at the agency, it was just a lot of chaos all the time, no matter what you were doing. And I've always just been the kind of person just like grabs and takes care of whatever's around me that needs doing. I didn't know any better, and I had done a lot of work where I had was a team of one before that. So I was used to kind of doing everything. That didn't feel that different. It just got to be a lot. But at Creative Market, I spent 6 months or so really finding my place as an engineer on the team and figuring out what did I uniquely contribute? How could I help? Um, and the boss that I had at the time, a really great guy named Chris, was a big proponent of not making his managers do two jobs. He really wanted it to be a clean cutover from coding all the time to managing all the time. And I didn't do great at that. I was still in writing bug tickets, still in picking up little things here and there for a while. But I think that the big shift was going from, oh, the problem that I'm trying to solve, the thing where I'm applying my creative problem solving skills is in the code, to I'm applying those skills to the people on my team. And it took a little while for me to kind of catch on to that, but then that got to be a game. So whether I'm doing interviews, I love, 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 love interviewing people for new jobs. It's one of my still very favorite parts. Or helping them work through a hard thing, overcoming imposter syndrome, growing, finding that next step in their career, or even helping people that are having problems and maybe the place we are is not a good fit, and helping them figure out how to transition out in a way that is hopefully good for everybody, and not,
Yep.
you know, sorry, you're terrible, you get the axe,
Yeah.
is never what anybody wants to do. Coaching back to a good place is always the goal, but all of that is a different kind of problem solving. Um, and a different way to use my engineer brain, that has been really challenging and fun.
Cool. I like that. I like uh, I like the reference to it's problem solving with people rather than with code. That's yeah, and it's
It's
um
definitely different. I mean, there's at least the illusion when you're working with computers that, like, if I write my code correctly, I will always get this outcome.
right,
Um,
right, consistency. Yeah,
right, right, and that is not true with people, at all. But it is still a lot of the same parts of the human brain involved in how do you approach this and what's the right way to do this. And in the same way that, there's 100 ways to solve any problem with code, but
right,
finding the right one for this situation and our technical limitations and our business goals and our timing and who we have working on it is, you're individualizing to that. Dealing with people is individualizing to the specific person. There's a lot of
right.
tools in the toolkit. There's always more to learn. But it really is about learning that person, building trust, figuring out what is the right way for us to move forward through this, whether it's a good situation or a hard one, and trying to individualize for the person and get just the right way to approach it.
I like that. Um, as you were starting to go down this road of problem solving with people rather than with code, um, were there any places where you were like, "Oh, I need to get better at
Oh,
XYZ skill?"
so many of them. Um, I think one thing, there's been a few little lessons that have kind of popped up along the way. One that I think about all the time is something that my old boss used to say, which is run to the inevitable. I think he got it from somebody, was like a board member or somebody that he worked for, and then just kind of passed it. It's been this nugget of wisdom. But basically was, if there's going to be a hard conversation, if you're going to have to deal with a hard situation, just go do it. Don't put it off. Don't wait. And the reason is, the longer you wait, the worse it gets, almost always. I think there
Right,
are times, if somebody's really heated, maybe give them a minute to cool down. There's times to, exercise some wisdom and tact, but generally, most of the time, it's not actually, if you're tempted to wait, it's not actually wisdom or tact. It's usually cowardice. It's like, oh, this is going to be a not fun conversation. I want to.
right.
And so learning to recognize and make my instinct to go have that hard conversation quickly was a real skill. And then another one that was really hard for me, when I get excited, I get really talkative. Um, I just learned within the last year that I had ADHD. I didn't know that about myself before, but it makes some of this make sense. If you start saying something and you're sharing something meaningful, my tendency is to jump in and share a similar story about myself. And what I'm trying to do is say, like, hey, I empathize. Apparently, that's very common with people who have ADHD to do this way. But I didn't know that. And what people heard was, oh, you're just making this about yourself. I'm trying to share something and all you're doing is talking about yourself. And so those things of like, just listen, echo back. If there's the right moment, a good moment, then share it. Make sure you wrap it back around to say, like, I sympathize. Here's why. Um, Getting things into fewer words. In fact, I have a manager read me that I've carried along with me for a long time now, and have just edited over and over. And I used to have this section, and there was like, hey, when I get excited, sometimes start talking too much. I sometimes will uh, derail. I'll think I know where you're going with something, and I'll interrupt and start talking where I think you're going. I missed what you're actually trying to say. If you catch me doing that, please interrupt me. Please stop me. I haven't had anybody have to do that in a few years, so I think I finally like learned my lesson. But it was hard. It was really painful for a while.
I like that self-awareness. Like, that's
Well,
really cool to have that visibility into, oh, I do this thing, and being able to tell people, you know, I recognize I do this sometime and it's not the best thing I could be doing.
Well, that came straight out of some 360 feedback that we did. I love getting
Nice.
360 feedback. I will say the higher you go in an org, the harder it is to get meaningful and honest feedback from people around you. But I've been really lucky to land at organizations. Creative Market was really great about that. Skylight's really good about this, where we value the safety and feedback. And we even have this, one of our principles is say the thing. If something is feeling bad, it's going off the rails, you're offended, you're not feeling good, all you have to do is say, hey, I need to say the thing. And then it's safe to say whatever it is. Everybody knows where you're coming from. We are exercising a shared value, shared language around this. Um, and so there was, for me, it was a combination of some really good say the thing feedback that I got from some of my team, in the context of a 360 feedback loop. And then also, I read the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, uh,
Yeah.
which is really painful when it starts hitting the things that it took me so long to read through, because I would get to a section and go, oh, that's me. And I would read a paragraph or two and then have to like put it down to digest for a couple of days to pick it back up. But I think it was really helpful. And,
Yeah.
I don't think it does us any good to get high ego about things and to not want to work on ourselves. And so, yeah, it was a humbling, it was a painful and humbling experience, but I think in the end, it's been good. And there's been, I will say this, at least my journey in leadership and in management has been that it's just a series of those over and over. I think I'm getting good at something, and then something else comes up where I'm like, I just keep making the same mistake. I keep doing the same thing. Um, and then, have to fight through it, push through it, trust that my team around me is going to be patient with me while I work on it, and another one will come up again in a few months. So,
Yeah. Yeah, just give it some time.
right.
Yeah. Again, great self-awareness. And I think that message there, that you're gonna make mistakes, and mistakes are part of the game,
Sure.
and you don't know everything. And so, yeah, you're just gonna that's part of leadership is growth mindset. And what is it that I don't know that I don't know, or that I think I know and I'm totally wrong, you know?
Yeah, that one happens a lot.
Yeah. And so I think those are just part and parcel of
Okay.
the game of leadership.
Absolutely.
It's just you have to be okay with that. I think, for me, I think I got super lucky because when I built my first software team, um, the first three people I hired were computer science majors out of Berkeley,
Oh, wow.
and they were really sharp. And I immediately, like, I knew during the interview process that they were smarter than I was about coding,
Right.
right? I was like, oh my God, okay, you guys are orders of magnitude above me. My job is to just make you successful. Like,
Right.
I got to figure out how to like make your lives as easy as possible. Um, and 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 that was number one. It was super humbling,
Right.
you know. But also I I
Right.
immediately got over thinking I was ever going to have to be the smartest guy in the room
Right.
because I knew that I could go to them with a problem and go like, "Hey, we need to build this thing. Here's what the customers are looking for. You know, here's the problems we're trying to solve. Here's our constraints. How do you guys think we should do it?" And they would come up with great answers and that I was never going to think of. And
Exactly.
so I was like, awesome. And I think I've been lucky since then to just repeatedly get people on the teams that were really good technologists, coders, problem solvers around technology.
Yeah.
And my job is just get them the
Picking them up.
clearest runway I possibly can.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
You've run a bunch of teams. You've seen a bunch of different iterations of this. What do you think is like, if you had to pick like one key indicator or one thing that's like the secret sauce to a really great, highly productive team, like what's the one thing you look for more than anything else?
Um, so there's actually two things. And I don't know how to have them like I don't know how to have a team where they have one and not the other. The first one is a very high level of psychological safety.
Mm,
That's critically important because, like you were talking about, I got to say the thing, right?
right.
Um, Being able to, as the team lead, build an environment where psychological safety is the norm, is it's critically important. So when I see a team like that, I know that someone's been doing the work.
Right.
Um, and the second thing is that they have really good communication and very, very good collaboration, and the level of contribution um, is it's very I'm trying to think of the right word. It's very equal. Um, like contextually, like, one person knows a bunch about UI and someone else knows all about databases on the back end. So their contributions and the conversations are different, but there's never a sense that there's people that are just spending all the time keeping their mouth shut and not
Right.
contributing. Um, and I've never, knock on wood, I've never inherited a team where that was the case. I've
Mm.
met teams and I've built some teams where that was the case. But I think that's
Sorry.
the two things. Yeah.
My kids are trying to come into my office. Some
Yeah. That's okay. It's all good. I think those are the two things that I'm always like, how do you guys like, how does this work and what's the um like everything else comes out of that, right? The cadence, their velocity, um, the kind of projects they sign up for, the um technical debt that they solve, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I frame it as trust and high care or high enthusiasm sometimes is maybe a better way to think about it, but
Yeah.
like they're the team is built a lot of trust between themselves, between me as a manager and my team, between the team and product or whoever their stakeholders are. Like
Mhm.
all of if that's good high trust and everybody can like assume best intent when somebody comes with something to them
Right.
or feel
Yeah.
and it creates that psychological safety to say the thing.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and then on the care side, it's like if somebody's just showing up because they like to write code, in some environments that can be okay. But if they're really motivated by what we're building, the problem that we're solving, if they happen to be the customer or like they have somebody in their life who is the customer, um,
Mhm.
or there's something else that just like really sells them on like why they want to be here building this thing right now.
Right.
Um, that makes such a difference in like everybody being cohesive and running the same direction and not, having pet agendas or getting into weird drama or anything.
Yeah. That's funny. Pet agendas. I like that. I might steal that phrase.
Yeah, I definitely think where I work, um, we have just uh, incredibly smart engineers. Like you were talking about, like it would be foolish of me to try to be the smartest person in the room with any of them. Um,
Right.
they're brilliant, really smart, really accomplished, um, and we are very fortunate to have them also be high care and highly very low ego, easy to get along with people. Those are things that we're hired for. But I have seen people who like my value is that I know how to do, I don't know, microsystems, or like I've really gotten deeply invested in this particular cloud ecosystem, and I really think this is the right answer for almost everything. And so um their their ability to feel like they're contributing or like they're valuable at work is
Mhm.
very wrapped up in a specific set of things happening a specific way or diving in using a specific tool. I've seen
Yeah.
CTOs who are like very locked into a particular technological ecosystem for reasons that don't have anything other than like that boosts their ego to be that guy. And I think it almost always slows down the org and leads to poor decisions,
Yeah.
because you're not actually just trying to solve what is the best tool for the moment or the right approach or technique. You're solving for making yourself look good,
Right.
um, and
Right.
that's uh, that means you're not pulling in the same direction as everybody else. You're kind of forcing everybody along your path.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I think that the idea you're talking about where you're looking more holistically at the problem and thinking more about it goes back to what we were talking about earlier is problem solving, right?
Right.
What's the problem? How do we solve it effectively? Do I whether I know the technology is leadership position or
Sure.
not is close to irrelevant. It's what's the best experience for our our clientele, whatever, you know, internal, external, lateral, whatever it happens to
Sure.
be. Um, and getting really that kind of a mindset for everybody at the table to be able to talk about. It's I say growth mindset a lot because I think that's a real reminder for curiosity to begin with.
Mhm.
Um, and a willingness to say, I have no idea. And and Josh, what do you think? You know,
Right.
and and have those conversations. And and I think again, it's a psychological safety booster where
Right.
the other people in the room don't feel like they're um undervalued because they're not the highest paid person in the room.
Right.
Yeah. And I want that, like when a new person comes in and they're like, "Oh, this problem looks a lot like something that we solved at my last company. I don't know if it'll work here. We did blah blah blah." Like everybody in the room goes, "Genius!" You
Right.
know, yeah,
Yes.
thank you. You just saved us a whole bunch of headache because you already know how to do this problem. Tell us more. Um,
I will say the one thing that I've had to work on is um, sometimes even when I'm the person who's seen this before, we're trying to solve this. I've been at a company, we dealt with this. Often the best policy is for me to just keep my mouth shut. Maybe ask smart questions that are like based on the way I saw this happen before. I know there's a headache here or there's a potential pitfall there. And so ask questions that make sure we're thinking through it. But especially the more senior my engineers are, or the more esoteric their skill set. So they're working in languages I haven't used, or they're doing, like it's the same problem. It is usually more advantageous for me to let them arrive at that solution, or to arrive at a solution, than for me to propose one. Um, for a lot of reasons, and one of them is that I often find that I thought I understood the problem space, and I don't actually fully understand the problem space. And so what we did there doesn't actually apply here, but it doesn't apply in ways I don't understand why it doesn't. And so a
Right.
big piece of me trusting and giving autonomy to my engineers is to ask the right questions and to probe in the right ways, but rarely to say, okay, this is what I've seen done that worked. Um, in fact, I can probably count on one hand the number of times that that's actually been a helpful thing for me to contribute in the last couple of years. It almost always is better to just ask.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And I think part of it is that when they come up with the solution, they have ownership.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and
that's definitely part of it. And I will say, like, I think I could make it sound like, oh, well, they're too high ego. They're not gonna listen to dumb manager over here who's, thinks he's seen it before. That's at least where I am, that's not what I'm getting at all. Very cool, very chill engineers, very low ego. What I am getting more of is that explanation probably took 5 minutes to get through to catch us up, and it's not actually helpful context. But if I can do the extra step in my head of saying, what was the core of the problem? Like, why am I feeling compelled to share this story? This was a thing we ran into that was a problem. I can just ask, do you think we are at risk of running into this? Would it
right.
create this situation? Is this other solution worth considering? I've heard of it. Um, is much, much more useful because I can ask that in 10, 15 seconds. And if it is useful, they'll catch on immediately and go with it, and
Right.
probably come up with something more elegant than what we did at the previous place anyway. But I didn't waste 5 minutes telling a story, and maybe that's on me for not being good at telling a story very fast. But
It's it's also it's letting them again, be the ones that are solving those problems, right? And that's yeah.
and that's
And
what they're hired for. That's another thing that I say all the time is if you are hiring engineers to write code, and that's where it stops, then you've left at least half of what they bring to the table out of the equation. Um,
yeah,
Engineers do this, and the ones who do it well because they are really good at solving problems. And that extends well beyond what they do hands on keyboard, in their IDE. It is much more about how they think about things. Um, and if the more information that they have, the more that they understand, like, what is the one thing we're trying to accomplish here? And
right.
it's all, we've got to solve this one pain point, or we need to provide this one solution, or we need to learn this one thing. Um, the more that you can break it down into, like, this is the one thing we're trying to solve. This is what we believe we know from the customers or from whoever. Here's kind of what we've gathered around it, and then let them be part of what I don't care if you're designing a new feature, if you're trying to figure out a performance or security issue, or literally even uh, it feels to me like these meetings that we're having all the time that we've been doing forever are starting to be less productive. If I can just say, here's what we were trying to accomplish when we set this up. Here's the pain I'm feeling. What do you guys think? But a lot of times, even in stuff like that, that's process and people, that's like clearly in my domain. Uh, they actually have better ideas than I do because they're very, very smart and they're very good at solving problems.
Yeah, yeah. And it, it's a it's a team thing, right? When you ask them about stuff and yeah, again, going back to psychological safety, when you're asking them to contribute to the solution, they know that you're not just doing command and control,
Right.
um, and that your ego is comfortable saying, "Hey guys, here's a problem. What do you think?" You know, and I think one of the confusions that often happens is that is that we don't always get great leadership role models as kids
Mm,
or in our first companies that we work at. And if you happen to go into a place where command and control is the norm, um, you don't know that that's not high performance and that that's not effective across the board in every context.
right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I think I see it from leaders. I see it uh, from contributors on the team. I see it from people in other departments. There's a tendency to take uh, your past experiences to really focus on the worst of the worst, and to say, well, this is just the way things work in the world, and index on that when you're approaching a new problem at a new company with new people, rather than taking advantage of the moment, which is I'm at a new place where I get to help create how this works.
right, exactly.
I get
Yeah,
to be part of change of setting this up. Like instead of thinking of it as an opportunity, you think of yourself as already limited to a system, and you get into a little bit of a self fulfilling prophecy loop if you're not careful. Right.
right,
I can tell a story. I once worked with a brilliant marketing person, SEO, um, just really really smart. And she was brought into a company that was heavily relied on SEO for our traffic. Um, and she was under resourced, did not have enough engineers to accomplish the things she was trying to get done. And so she and she'd had this, I think, at previous companies, and we definitely did it to her at this company. And she complained about it. And so I was assigned, you make sure she has what she needs to get her stuff done. And um, after a few months, I had to just sit her down and say, hey, um, I think you're not bringing me all of your stuff. I what's going on? And she said, I'm just eliminating all of the hard stuff that takes a lot of engineering because I know that'll never get done. And I said, that's literally my job is to make sure you have the resources to get that thing done. And she had such a hard time believing it. And it was such a shift. It was an eye opening moment for me. I've referenced this many times since then when I see somebody come in. And so a lot of times in my world, it takes the shape of an engineer who has come from a command and control kind of a background, or they've come from a place where it's high ego or a lot of interpersonal politics and like the CEO has an agenda that's like totally unproven and but they're just so sold on it because they think they're a genius. That happens a lot. And so somebody comes in, they're like, we want to do this, and the way that you move up and the way that you succeed at those companies is to work around these suboptimal systems.
right,
And so well, I'll get engineers who are very insistent on building the entire system up front perfectly, fully tested, fully vetted, scalable for an infinite number of users, whatever. When all we need is to like learn this one thing. And so, maybe all we want to know is if we increase the size of this search bar, will more people search and will that lead to more conversions? That's a very simple, scrappy, you can set up a test to learn that in absolutely no, I'm going to throw that away, win, lose, or draw on this test. It
right,
doesn't
right,
perfect code. It just has to tell us the one thing we need to know. But I see a lot of engineers who come in and they want to build it, oh, well, we need to think about this. And it has to fit into our design system just so, and it has to do all these things because they are convinced from past experiences, if I don't do it perfectly the first time, it will never happen. And then
right,
I will be responsible for having put a bunch of horrible tech debt that we're all going to have to deal with into the code base. And other engineers, including me, will be in the future will be mad at past me for having done this. Um, and so they're indexing on that. But it doesn't have to be that way. If you have a good, healthy org, you have good trust between product and engineering, you can say, I'm going to do this because that gets this experiment out the door tomorrow. And
Right.
then you can learn. If we decide to this wins and we keep it, here's I need this much. I need 2-3 sprints to really firm this up, and we can break it into iterative pieces. But we're going to firm this up and make it something we're proud to keep in our code base.
Yeah.
I see that and variations of that all the time. But I think, and I see it with leaders, and I see it with all kinds of things. I think it is a really hard skill to go, I don't actually know that that's the way this works here. And I don't know that I have to play by those rules anymore. And in fact, even if that's the way it is here, I want to challenge that system and try to make things better because that is problematic. Um, it's not, I guess it's not safe at every org, but at an org where it is safe, that is a much better outcome at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, going back to the whole curiosity thing,
Mm.
um, going in and being curious about how it operates. Cause like I've made pretty radical shifts between companies,
Hmm.
and leadership and company size. And, it's very different when you're at a startup that's 30 people or
Right.
50 people. And then you go to Google, it's like whole different ballgame. Um, and so I I tend to go in thinking I don't understand how this works compared to what I did before. Um, and I think it's because I've just worked at so many different kinds of organizations over the years that I kind of expect that when I walk in the door, I'm gonna have no clue what's going
Right.
what's going on. I'm just gonna have to walk in and be like, "Hey, this is my first 6 months, and I have no idea how you guys do anything. Um,
Right.
where's the bathroom? And
Exactly.
what? How come the lights shut off at 6 o'clock at night? Like whatever, right? Um, and that way, it just makes my life way easier. And I ask a bunch of dumb questions,
So
but
important.
in the long run, it's less time, and I think it's easier on me. Um, the other thing that I do, and I will fully admit to being Machiavellian, is I figure out what other people's success metrics are so that I can communicate with them in their context, not mine.
Right.
And this is one of the things that I found, um, made it much, much easier talking to people in different parts of the organization and getting allies for things that I wanted to do. Um, because sometimes the solutions my teams came up with were completely not in the realm of what we're doing today. And I had to get buy-in from people in a bunch of different parts of the org. And so I had to understand the sales team success metrics and the guy that runs the sales team success metrics versus the people on the team and customer support and
Right.
operations, finance, like everybody, right? Oh, and by the way, what is it my CTO wants?
Right.
Um, and be able to adjust my communication in all those places because there's stuff that I knew that they didn't know they didn't know. And so I had to be able to frame it so they would go, "Oh, I totally get it. That makes sense."
Yeah, that's such a big deal. And it's one of the tips that I give people when they come to Skylight. We have this frame. Our values and principles work like a framework for this is how we make decisions. This is how we think about what we want to do next. We're very, very serious about them, more than anywhere else I've worked before. And I was unprepared for that when I came in. And so
Ah,
some of the places that I really stepped in it when I started, at my last company, we were building really fast. We had a bunch of money that had come in from investors, and the name of the game was grow really fast, get to the place where um, we are going to be able to raise the next round. And so we've got to impress these investors. So it was all about a big building and really smart people on the team. We hired a bunch of leaders before we had all the engineers that they needed in our org. We did a bunch of things. And it was, don't get me wrong, it was a blast. I had a lot of fun. I was working with some of my very favorite people. And there was a lot of freedom to do what I knew how to do. And so a big part of my role was going, here's a thing we don't have a process for. Here's a lightweight, easy way to do that. Or and I felt like I was often because like I said, we hired several really smart leaders all at the kind of at the same time. Our teams weren't even fully fleshed out. We all were coming in trying to be leaders and do that same thing. And so often somebody would come and say, like, here's a great process for doing this. And I felt like my role was going, well, we don't actually have that problem yet. So can we wait to implement that until we have that problem? Or can we scale that down to something really, really simple for this place? And I thought that was my strong suit, was like getting to being kind of like the process person who could get to the really simple thing. And then I came here and I remember going, oh, we need to solve for this. I really want to tell specific stories, but I shouldn't. Here's a thing we definitely need documented. This is really important. We don't have anything for this. Everybody's been, because we were 29 people in the whole company at the time. We were scrappy, um, and getting hit with, well, that our one of our core values is autonomy, and so we allow managers to do this however they want because they should be autonomous. And I remember thinking, yeah, but that's not rigorous in them being, because it's autonomy, rigor, and care. That's the three main values. That's not rigorous. Well, why is it not rigorous? And at first I was so dumbfounded, and all I could come up with were versions of like, that's just not how it's done. Like you have to do this. Um, and it took me a minute, but a big turning point for me was when I realized, no, 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 this is actually empowering autonomy. You don't have to go reinvent the wheel. Here's the checklist of things. If you are um, dealing with an underperforming employee who needs to be managed out, or you're working through the hiring cycle, or you're doing whatever, here's the Skylight way of doing that. That's just like a checklist, and you can have all the autonomy you want to handle individual pieces of this differently, but it makes us more rigorous because we're not skipping a step that we all agree is really important. We're being caring to our people by not making them have to go chase down this information. We're also being caring to the person on the other side of that conversation because we're making sure that we're doing all of the things we said we would do that are right by them. And when I could figure out like what is the shared language, what is the framework, what is the expectation, things started happening. And and I could tell several other stories of times when I went. We were trying to figure out how to measure velocity for our engineers, figure out are they fast or are they not. And I was looking at different frameworks and trying to put stuff together. And what I can't take credit for this. Our CPO came up with it. Basically like, well, we've got these different cross-functional pods. We'll ask them to set really aggressive roadmaps that they know they can't hit. And then if we hit 80 to 90% of that, then we're fast. And if we're not hitting 80 to 90%, then it's on the product manager and the EM on that team to dig in and figure out what's going wrong. Is it a particular person, or is it a systems thing? Is stuff overscoped, underscoped? What are we doing? We'll chiropractic that in the moment, but we're not going to worry about trying to track any other silly metrics. We're just going to say, did it feel like an aggressive roadmap? Did we hit most of it anyway? That's it.
Right.
Um, and that is what works here. It wouldn't have worked at some of the other places that I've worked, but because of the way we're wired, they trust that our product managers know how to set an aggressive roadmap. They trust that our engineering managers know when a person is having a problem versus when it's a systemic. And all they really care about is that at the end of the day, we're shipping a lot of stuff that makes our customers really happy. And so that's the one metric we actually watch. But man, getting to that point and figuring that out was really painful.
I think it's interesting that the the solution of how to operate that, you said, was your CPO came up with.
Hmm.
It's really, that's kind of what's the core nugget of the problem we're trying to solve, right?
Right.
Which totally makes sense. And I like the idea of the aggressive timelines. I have
Good.
this I have this hypothesis. Um, that, and this is purely based on my own experience, like everybody's mileage will vary on this one. Um,
Sure.
but if you give teams aggressive timelines and a reason to go after it, they will deliver.
Mhm.
Um, if you give them an aggressive timeline, and by the way, you have to release the product. You can't give people an
Right.
aggressive timeline and then not release the product because that's just super frustrating for everybody involved. Um, it's super demoralizing if you do that. But if you set the aggressive timeline, you release the product, everybody's happy and they like that competition.
Well, and it
And I
also it gives them context when they understand why we're pushing to get something out by a certain date. It gives them context to be able to make good judgment calls.
Yeah,
I've been at companies where we just started imposing fast deadlines on teams just to it was fully artificially, like
right,
shamelessly artificial. And you're right, um it was very demoralizing. But if it's like, hey, we sell use a Skylight example. Like one of our big seasons is we have like Mother's Day and back to school, and then at the holidays around Christmas. Our products are pretty heavily gifted. And so we if we work backwards from those and we say, this is when we know we're going to have a lot of sales, when a lot of these things are going to come online. Here's the experience we want them to have when that happens. To work backwards from that, we need these things to release by here so they can be well tested in the real world, and we're sure they're not going to, turn it on to a bad experience. That works really well. The only artificial thing that I've seen work was an idea from the president of our company. And I think he brought it over from he was at Ring previously, and I think that's where he brought it from. Which is you are not allowed to scope something that you can't ship in 3 sprints or less. So, and we do 2 week sprints. So you got 6 weeks. You have to ship something. Um, and the more that I get, when we first said that, I went, that feels very artificial and awful. And to be clear, we don't enforce this very strongly today, but we did for a while. And it was really, really helpful in making you figure out how to break something into iterative pieces. You could commit to
right,
something that's going to take you 6 months, but it forced you to say, I'm going to make a piece I can release and start to learn from in this much time. And we've seen over and over and over that often what you thought was critical and really important, especially in feature scope, right? Like the technical parts, the engineers tend to know, like it's going to need to be architected this way. But there may be like, oh, we thought needed this particular configuration or this setting, or we needed the app to talk to the device in this particular way. And then you launch the core, you do the exercise of breaking it down to that core nugget of the thing. That's solving the one thing under the thing that you say you're solving in the most effective way possible that you can release really fast. And then everybody gets really excited about it doing that. And you watch what they do. If they're solving a problem in a very hacky way and you can pave that road, then that gives you your next roadmap item, the next iteration. Or if there's a workaround that they're doing that's like, actually, that workaround's pretty great in and of itself, and anything we come up with is not going to be better than that, then you don't do it. But
right,
it's constantly surprising to me how many things, when we did our user interviews up front, customers were like, this is absolutely critical. We won't use that feature if it doesn't have this setting or this configuration or whatever. And then we launch it without it. And then they find out, oh, it turns out I didn't really need that. I'm actually fine without it. And then we never build it because nobody actually cares.
right.
And so you don't vent getting to that piece that was the real solve, waiting on the
Yeah,
thing that like maybe they don't actually need. And so, yeah, that's all of that to say, that's the only way I've seen an artificial deadline imposed. It's not really a deadline. It's just, it's a good creative constraint to
right,
say,
right.
what can you ship in 3 sprints or less? And honestly, I would say these days, I might even push, if I was going to really push on this, I might say you have to ship in 2 sprints. Um, because we've gotten pretty good at this, and I think we could pare it down more.
Yeah, yeah. Certainly with having like feature flags and stuff like that, where you can have
Exactly.
stuff go out and nobody sees it yet except for QA. Um, you certainly could do that.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
may be that the thing that you ship is completely behind the scenes. This was all of our
Right.
schema changes. We shipped some underlying business logic code. We've got some API endpoints that nobody's actually hitting, but it allows us to begin to test those things in production. Make
Yeah.
sure it keeps your footprint
Yeah.
small, your blast radius is minimal. All of
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. And I think what that sets is a tone of velocity, and I think that's always a good thing. It's always exciting. Um, One of the things that when I was at Google that really disturbed me was that there was no sense of urgency,
Mm,
and and uh, and when it like be like, hey, like we have customers really like to have a feature that would solve this problem, right? Yeah, we'll get it out in the next 6 to 9 months. And I was thinking that only works because you're Google,
right.
and you've got semi
You're
monopoly.
basically a monopoly at this point.
Yeah,
Nobody's
I'm like,
switching.
seriously. And so I just couldn't like. I guess because I'm so used to smaller companies where we actually want the customer's money, and we want it as consistently, repeatedly. I was always thinking like, how fast can we take care of them? You
Right.
know, and everybody got that. Like that wasn't a hard conversation to have in the engineering side. Probably partly because that was a recurring conversation, you know, and oh, we want this feature because we've got 17 customers that are all asking for the exact same thing. Um, and they'll pay for it as an add-on to what else we have.
Right.
And there's another 35 that won't sign up until we deliver this. So, let's help the sales team get their bonuses.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, I think that's a good driver. Well, this has been super cool. I'm noticing the time, and you have to get ready for a storm. And
Yes.
so stock up on firewood. I think that's number one. Um, and warm clothing. And I hope you guys come through it. That everything is good. And
I'm
it all
sure it
works
will
out.
be. I'm sure I'll be fine.
Yeah,
We've weathered worse ones before. I'm sure we'll be fine, but
excellent,
uh,
good.
I
And
appreciate it.
and a final note: you guys are hiring.
We are hiring.
And I just want to make sure that anybody that's listening, like, know that's
Please,
happening.
yeah, please send people my way. Please come apply. I need to hire at least another 20 roles in the next 6 months, just on
Dang.
engineering. So
Okay.
yeah, and it's a really wonderful place to work, and I'm not just blowing smoke. I really love it here.
Cool.
It's a really great
I
place.
like it. Beautiful. I'm going to stop the recording. That was awesome. Thank you.